I'm here today with Navya Nanda and Gayatri Chabria. And we're going to talk about period poverty, but more specifically, it's about how women in some communities around India get banished out of their houses during the 5-day, 7-day period every month, and get banished to what are called period huts, and they're extremely unsanitary and extremely dangerous, I want to say. And just reading about this, like, kind of just blew my mind. So I wanted to talk to both of you. I think it's incredible when women themselves are in a position to make a change and they actually do it. So congratulations to both of you.
Thanks for having us here today. I'm Gayatri Chabria, trustee, Mukul Madhav Foundation. For us, when the team happened to be on ground in Gadchiroli, we chanced upon this entire concept, the culture, and this practice of banishing women when they're on their period. And truly, it was heartbreaking to learn that in today's day and age, there are women who are having to live in shame and feel less respected and when they're on their period, simply because they're menstruating, which is in fact not a issue or not anything wrong that they're doing. It's by birth, biologically, how we've been created and are meant to be living our lives. And yes, and that's when I broke out with this conversation when I was chatting with Navya, and we realized that there are synergies. Both of us were driven towards wanting to help, making a change. We realized, of course, our vision for the long term would be to actually dilute this practice and ensure that women don't have to be banished, and they should not, periods or menstruation should no longer be a topic that is a taboo. But we thought in the short term, what best could be as an intervention is that we're able to, get into the villages, speak with the women, and at least try and alleviate them from the situation of living in a gaukar, which is an 8x8, very unsafe, unhygienic sort of a space in which women are literally pushed into for the days that they bleed. And our thought was, why not build them a home which is more comfortable with the basic amenities that anyone would, should they be staying somewhere, so that at least they can bleed peacefully with dignity and need to feel sorry about themselves.
I'm so glad that you said that the long-term vision was to kind of get into the mind space and dilute that thought in the first place, that women need to be banished. So right now you're doing what you can to essentially keep women safe and take care of their health. Navya, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Project Naveli, why you started it and what it's about, or what your focus is rather?
Yeah, so I think Project Naveli was started primarily to support gender equality, which is something that I've been wanting to work on for a very long time, being a young woman in India. And though coming from a privileged background, you can still see the inefficiencies that women face in India today, whether it's with access to healthcare or whether it's breaking out from gender norms and roles that usually suppress women in our society. And I think that is why I wanted to start it, because I felt that we needed younger women to come out and do this kind of work, because it's essentially us who are going to be, living in this world that we're trying to create. And I think it's our responsibility to contribute towards that future that we are trying to build. And that's why I started Project Naveli. And the main focus of Project Naveli is definitely to fight against gender inequality, but specifically in the 4 areas where at least I feel that gender inequality is most prevalent in India. So education, healthcare, domestic violence, and obviously financial independency. So these are the 4 areas in which Project Naveli is working in to support gender equality and give women more opportunities to try and break out of this cycle that we're currently in, where women are continuously suppressed because they don't have access to equal opportunities.
Yeah, that's very succinct in terms of the subcategories for sure. Why do you think healthcare is a feminist issue or a gender inequality? Healthcare should be
I think
I mean-
I think before even understanding, the access to healthcare, I think it's important to understand, how healthcare is viewed by women in general. I think, women inherently prioritize the health and well-being of their family over themselves very, very often. I've seen that happen at my own home with my grandmother, my mother, and they're the sole caregivers, and because of that, they're always taking care of the family, the husband, the children, and I don't think that their own health is ever a priority, mental or physical health. And I think that stems from the gender roles that, we force as a society. And that's where the patriarchy comes in, and, misogyny, where, men have always been the head of the family and the breadwinner, and the woman, the caretaker. And I think that has really caused a big disparity in terms of how women even look at health and prioritize their own well-being. And when it comes to access to healthcare, that's a completely different story, because we've seen that a typical structure in Indian homes is, often we see the family involved very heavily in the woman's, reproductive process and the conception planning process. And it's something that, your in-laws, your parents, your siblings, and everyone is involved in that process. And I think women face a continuous challenge in maintaining that autonomy or control over their own bodies about the decisions that they want to make. And I think that it's because of these roles that we've, imposed on women for so many years, as a result of, the patriarchal society that we live in, that has, led to something like this happening, and has led to healthcare becoming a feminist issue, or, an issue caused by patriarchy.
How do we get young girls to start prioritizing health? Because those young girls will then become mothers who will understand the value of that, right?
My personal opinion on this is that I think the conversation has to begin from home, right? There needs to be able to we need to be able to create an environment where you can have a healthy conversation. And, when you're talking about topical conversations like puberty, it need not be coming in the space of shame or guilt, right? We need to realize that we're biologically different.
Yeah.
Boys at that age go through their own course of understanding their body, of voice cracking, of them growing a beard. This is what happens to a girl at the same age, right? And how come it's such a easy dinner table conversation to, get all excited about which shaving gel you're going to use and what kind of a blade are you going to shave with?
And it's a rite of passage.
Exactly. And absolutely. And why can you not as comfortably talk about what pads do you think are most comfortable? And should you be heading towards using more eco-friendly ones, or is it really okay to use what's been around in the market for so long? So all I'm trying to get to here is that we need to normalize the conversation, right? It needs to be a part of our upbringing, and it needs to be supplemented by our educators in terms of our teachers at school, who continue to reinforce the same message. Unfortunately, at school, I don't recollect having lessons specifically on, we used to do life skills, for example. But why didn't life skills include this as a topic, right? Why did you minus out healthcare from life skills, which just to me seem that it should naturally all be a fit, right? And I think that conversation is, prevalent for both boys and girls. For families where there is a sister and a brother growing up together, normalize having the conversation in the boys or in the brother's presence. Let the father be part of it as well, right? I agree there's a lot that we're tackling with in terms of what's been happening historically, right? And as a result, it's just percolated into the cultural system, and therefore families just continue to do what has been happening. But someone somewhere needs to stand up and make that change, right? And I think men need to be also made to feel more comfortable. They need to be okay with discussing that topic. Often you find that, they shy away from it, right? Perhaps because they understand what other men may have done to have really made this conversation so awkward for women and men alike, right? But so I really think it begins from home. It's a small change that we all need to be able to make. and be able to pass on this message to as many people we're in direct contact with, right? And I think Navya and I mentioned this in one of our other conversations as well. It starts even from something as simple as your house help. Have a chat with her, have a chat with him, tell them what they can do in their family, and that's how you're reaching out to people across the spectrum.
It's also about the kind of role models that you have, and I think for younger boys especially, it's really important to have strong male figures in their life who are representing the kind of behavior that we would want from men in the future, because they are going to be influenced by watching their brothers, their uncles, their fathers. And I think that that would be one way in which I think younger boys can get influenced, is looking at the figures that they have in their life, not just family but also teachers, leaders, that I think any public figure who is a man today should know that they are being watched by the next generation. And I think that their behavior and the way that they conduct themselves, the language that they use with women, when they talk about women, I think is what will influence the younger boys. And that is very important. I think having strong male role models, but also I think watching their mothers prioritize their health, and seeing their moms taking care of themselves and supporting their own mental and physical health, not just for young boys but also for young girls, is a great sense of inspiration. Because I see my mother and I'm very influenced by her and inspired by her. And I think if moms start taking care of their health and prioritizing that, I think their daughters will grow up looking at that and inherently take that from them, and then in the future we won't have this kind of a cycle.
It's leading by example, essentially, right?
At school, it's two-way, right? One is communicating, whether it's through your educators, whether it's through the girls who are in batches older than you and have been through that phase, or it's through bringing in guest speakers. But it's also about providing the infrastructure, right? If I'm going to walk into the washroom and there is no facility like you mentioned to throw the used pad, or there is no you're not able to access other basic amenities that you need, then you're really pushing me into a corner to say, you know what, let me go to school for a few days, but I'd rather be at home and be comfortable and not have to worry about suffering with cramps but putting up a strong face, right? Why are we made to believe that we have to get used to this pain? I think I read somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, the cramps are compared to the intensity of a heart attack, right? Do you ever tell someone get used to that kind of pain? I don't think so. So why are you making women feel like they're making a big deal of nothing?
Why there was the need for this infrastructure?
The immediate answer to why we felt that something like this was needed was definitely because of the safety of these women, and leaving them in empty fields, on these grounds alone at night, or just in general without any proper sanitation or hygiene practices, obviously poses many risks. And I think that was the priority, with the immediate reason as to why these homes were required. But I also think that these homes are a way to make women feel special, but also create an environment for them where they feel safe and secure, not just during menstruation but also otherwise. And I think we've made sure that it's not just a place where they can just go sleep and go use the washroom, but also a place where they can interact with one another and upskill themselves, with the inclusion of the sewing machines and everything. And I think that aspect of it is also to send out a message, I feel, to the rest of the village that for so many years these women have been disregarded, not prioritized, their health and well-being kind of not taken into account clearly because of this practice. And I think that this is also a way to make them feel special and break against these patriarchal norms, because we are supporting them directly by building these homes especially for them.
Absolutely. And I think just to build on to that, our first home that Mukul Madhav had built was in May of 2020, and when we made our visits thereafter, when the lockdown had eased, we realized that those women who had utilized the home were rather excited and elated that they got these 5 days off, right? They treated it like a holiday home. Like Navya mentioned again, we've ensured that they're able to walk away after the time spent being more educated and having upskilled themselves, right? So the introduction of sewing machines was so that they can be taught how to sew and they can be sewing right from making sanitary pads for themselves to stitching masks. And as a result, they're able to walk home with a little something that they earn by selling what they've made, right?
And a sense of pride, like the sense of community, the sense of pride that comes along with it as well, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sense of pride, community, feeling independent, right? Financially independent in a sense, because she's been able to walk home, even if it's a nominal amount. For her, it's a big change in her outlook for herself and also for her amongst her villagers, because she's been able to earn that for herself. But yes, what we also tend to do is and of course, right now there's been a little bit of a disruption owing to the pandemic. But the idea and what we have in the pipeline is for them to have constant talks, right? So whether it's taking ASHA and A&M nurses to educate them about hygiene and health in general, whether it's a talk with nutritionists to explain to them that with the produce that is locally available, what is it that they should definitely be eating during those 7 days so as to ensure that their iron levels don't drop, it doesn't affect their B12, so on and so forth, right? Something as simple as, okay, have nachni because it's good for iron. Consume gur because again that's good to keep up your energy levels, right? What we tend to do is when the speaker comes in, it's done in a in a central space where all the women from the village can gather. So everyone gets the talk once and for all. So they're all educated, but they tend to share that knowledge further, or the experience when they're in the homes is what we've noticed.
If you have a parting message for the women of Girl Tribe by Miss Malini.
It's definitely, you hit the nail. It's community. I think that women coming together, we're so much stronger when we support each other and when we come together in the form of community and when we stand up and we use our voices. And I think that is what, whether it's Girl Tribe or whether we've seen so many women today, create these communities and initiate those conversations like we're doing today. And I think that is so important.
I think I'd only like to part with a very simple statement, which is be unapologetic about what you need and what your body needs.